It's cold in the studio today, so I have my torn painting shirt on. It's Roz again, and I went to do a painting today with something that was on my iPad, and I had 8% battery power, so I am going to sketch one of my state fair photos. If you've read my blog, you know that I always recommend that people sketch first at the fair and only take pictures when their eyes are tired and through. I find that you get distracted and you don't pay as much attention and you don't see as much if you're busy taking photos and not sketching first. So anyway, this last year I went and sketched 3 days at the fair. It was a little bit different because of the cataract stuff, but I did it. And then when I left each day, as I walked out of the barns, I took some photos. And it's my hope that I'll use the combination of the sketches I made and the photos that I took at the end of the days that I was there, that I'll make some sort of series of bird portraits. But that hasn't happened yet. That's for the future. Today I wanted to do some sketching, and like I said, the iPad was too low in battery. So what I'm doing now is I've called up one of those state fair photos, and I'm going to actually sketch from that. And I'm going to do the sketch on a little piece of Claybord. Why not? So we'll see what happens. Okie doke. Claybord is a hardboard. I think you can see from there a hardboard surface on which a clay coating has been applied, and this is like scratch board. This is the smooth stuff. So you can put ink on here and scratch it off and have nice fine lines, things like that. Scratch board, scrapper board. In England, I think it's called scrapper board still. And I like to paint on this. This one's been sitting on the desk. It was taken out and not used and put aside, and then it's just been floating around on the desk, and it's got some scratches over it, so that'll make some interesting pattern or texture, whatever. But I'm going to sketch on it in pen, and then I'm going to do some other things with it. I paint on Claybord all the time. Usually I use Aquaboard, which is the one that used to be called textured, and it still has texture, but now they call it Aquaboard, and I guess because so many people were using it for watercolor. And anyway, it's great for watercolor, and I'll say some more things about that, I think, at the end. Okie doke. And I'm going to just sketch with one of these Sakura Pigma professional brush pens in the FB, which is the fine point brush. This will be a little bit of a trick because this is a very odd looking pigeon, and I'm looking quite a distance over to my screen, and I have to look up and down a little bit more substantially. So we'll see. And also, today I'm very distracted, so I don't think I can hold much in my memory, my visual memory. I don't know if it matters to you, but I tend to name things. And this looks like a Jeremy to me. So that's what I'm calling it as I draw. Yeah, I might have totally misplaced things. I thought, oh, this guy has such a tiny little nose and beak. show you something about that in a moment. I'm not being really careful here. Sort of not looking like a Jeremy anymore, but whatever. Maybe yes. Okay, I went and got an X-Acto. It's a number 16. I think it's a 16. I can never remember if it's 16s or 11s. It's an 11. It's lost the tip. They seem to break much more readily now than they used to. And I'm holding it flat, so let's see if you can see this. I'm holding it flat like that against the board. And I'm going to scrape some of this away. Not with the tip, because I'm not trying to gouge into there. But with the flat of the blade. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had my head in there. I have to look more closely, and my hat's going to get in the way. Like that a little bit. Whatever. It's only a very little bit of movement across there. You don't, like I said, you don't need to get in there at all. I usually have it, how do I describe this? I usually have double-sided tape on the back here, and I stick it on a cube, like a stamping block, so that I can hold it and roll it around and grab it. But I didn't think this through. I just grabbed this sort of randomly. You don't want to spit on it. You don't want to get moisture on there. On another day, we'll do like maybe a whole pen and ink thing. But that wasn't what I set out to do today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in closer on this because it's so small you don't need all that space. I'm not trying to be really precise in getting everything. But I'm going to try and fix some things here. You do want it to be dry before you scrape it off. Otherwise it just kind of smears. I think I like the first line better. You know, if you tend to spit when you blow, or if your fingers are moist or have lotion on them, rather than touch this and blow on it, you might take a drafting brush, which is this, and just lightly brush the stuff away. If we were doing a lot of scraping, also on this, I would tell you to wear a mask, a respirator, because you should not breathe in this dust. It lodges in your lungs and causes scarring. So that's true with when you're doing scratchboard too. You should always have protective gear on. Okay. Missing this whole line to be like that. I'm just judging this. It'd be easier if I could get up there and see it. But it's not going to be too important, as you'll see in a moment. You want to keep your fingers off the surface as much as possible. Okie doke. So that's the sketch I'm going to go with. At this point, you could just paint it, and that would be fine. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a sanding block. You can also get those plastic sanding blocks that you wrap sanding paper around. Just use fine sanding paper for that. You could probably get away with an emery board. And I'm just going to sand away. Cut this a little bit. Why am I doing this? I don't know. It appealed to me one day. I did it. I like it. It changes how the stuff looks under the watercolor we're going to use. It also scratches up the surface of the Claybord slightly and evenly, and I like that look. And then I think also it's a holdover from doing scratchboard because I used to have to prep my scratchboard, and there's a rubbing and sanding process that you go through, or used to have to go through. If you're going to use this as a pendant, I sometimes make jewelry this way. I recommend that you drill the hole before you start this process. If you're going to use prongs around it, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to drill this for an ornament, like for a Christmas tree or an Easter tree or a Halloween tree, something like that, then I recommend that you do two things. That you put backing on here, like maybe some decorative paper, and glue and adhere that and make that final first, and that you also then drill the hole right through so that you're ready to go. It just works better if you do it beforehand. You then have to protect it, but you can do that by a number of means, putting masking tape, to hold the shield onto it or something like that. But I'm not digging into the board, but I'm just trying to get some of this off. Now, the thing is, if you don't like it when it's painted, you can always put the ink lines back in later. Okay. I'm going to go dump all this dust in the garbage. I've got some paints that I put out the other day. I think they might still be soft. There we go. Most of these are Winsor Newton watercolors. There are a couple colors that are Daniel Smith and one that's a Holbein. I think I can put this here. Oops, that's not going to show. Let's put that here. Well, you're not going to be able to see the whole palette because I've come in close so you can actually see this little guy. So we won't worry about that. But you'll be able to see what kinds of colors I'm putting down. And I basically got a warm and a cool red, a warm and a cool yellow, and a warm and a cool blue. Some other odd colors. The water color may pill up on this, and don't worry, take some layers and whatnot, so I'm not concerned about that. To make a kind of purpley lavender color for the shadow areas. Kind of a bold choice. Might want to go lighter. If you don't have enough pigment and you just get water down there, then it's going to look kind of gray as opposed to pigmented because it sinks a little bit into the stuff, the Claybord. A little bit of alizarin crimson to get the pink beak. And put a little bit of that Winsor orange here. I'm going to use some we use? Perylene green. See, this is when it comes in handy to have it actually stuck down on something with double-sided tape. But we're going to take a piece of masking tape and make it into a loop and stick it on the back there and have that hold it down. If we don't get too rambunctious, that should hold for now. But you can see the reasoning behind what I normally do. I will probably treat the edges when I'm all done with gold, and so I'm not concerned about things getting on the edges, but if you are, then I suggest you tape those edges. Oops, and that's not dry yet. That's okay. My hat hasn't been in the way. Painting on the surface, at least in the first layers, is very much like painting on Yupo paper, except looser. Push the paint around. Go ahead and play with it. Don't worry if it's getting weirdly puddled. That's what it'll do on this, because this is a smooth surface. So now I've just hidden that balloon of color there by just pushing it away with some strokes. It's that simple. You can think when it dries what kinds of strokes you want the background to have. I had recently a discussion with one of my students about the fact that you don't want a really complex background if you have a really complex figure, because then they both draw focus away from each other. But that might be exactly what we test today. I'm going to use a little bit of Venetian red and a little bit of the orange to get a nice eye color. I could have been a little bit bigger. I'm going to take a little brush. I've been using an 8. I'm going to take a 1 and just put some shading in here on the part of the beak that is underneath. There's more shading on this side of the sear. there's some bit up in here too, so put that in. And we're going to put a little bit of blue, bluish, purple part of the eye. It's all pretty much dark, but it's more dark down here. A little bit of lemon yellow deep up here. Right here. And then we're going to get some yellow deep up in here. This is actually a little bit heavier than I would have gone, but only because I'm thinking of taking some off. But who knows? So this is, I'm putting more Perlin green in the background. You can experiment with different kinds of strokes. I think you can see that gives it a different kind of feel in the background. The more you work it, the more the surface will change beneath you, and you'll discover new ways that you want to proceed. And it has something to do with how the material gets saturated underneath all that. I'm going to use some Perlin green and some small blue and a little bit of Perlin maroon to mix a dark neutral for the pupil. Get some in there. This is a kind of pigeon that has almost a parrot-like beak. It's really kind of weird. Here, let's come down here. So this little guy is backlit. This is maroon and a little bit of alizarin crimson. To give you the edge of that sear. Use it to warm that area up a little bit. I'm going to use a little bit of Van Dyke brown to darken the top part of the eye and make it a little rounder again. Can't really see that. Ideally, you would wait to do that when the eyeball is dry. Yellow that's been neutralized down a little bit. This part of this here. I'm sorry, for this part of the orbital ring. Starting to get thicker in the paint because I got thicker in one area and decided, okay, I'm not going to do what I'm going to do next, but I will describe what I would usually do. I may do it in some areas. Okay, just playing around with that now. Hear me spritzing my paints off to the side to keep them fresh. So if you want to work a little less opaquely on all areas, you can simply make layers transparent and build them up and push them around. Now, I want to show you something else that's fun to do. You might undo it, but I'm going to protect Jeremy, and I'm just going to spritz this. Oops, that was too much. Let's see what happens. I can't find my little bottle that just sprays a little bit. Oops, too much. I'm going to take and with a clean brush, I'm going to lift out paint there. Clean the brush, keep lifting. If you can't get all the way back to what you want over here, then you can scratch it out. We'll do a little bit of that in a minute. You want to keep cleaning your brush. Don't use your favorite brush for this. It's hard on your brush, and realize that staining pigments are not going to lift well, and so you are going to have to maybe do some scraping back. You can, of course, reserve these areas and never get pigment in them in the first place, but that can be sometimes a little problematic. Straight out of my hand. Just a little bit of lemon yellow and white gouache. Things up a bit. That spraying I did up at the top didn't work. I was hoping to be able to lift off. Oh, there it did. I just had to leave it on longer. Lift off certain bits. Now I'm not going to leave that there. If you spray on things, you can then, after it soaks up, you can lift them off and move them around again in different ways. Okay? See how easy that is? But I want to keep that pretty dark because that'll make the white feathers pop more. But I'm making it kind of swirly because the feathers are swirly. Kind of like that. Okay. Sometimes using a brush like this, the mini mop, you can get colors picked up out of areas, and so you can start modeling, shading. Doesn't have the control, so I actually got some in that yellow area. I'm having too much fun with the mop here, and once I get down to his cheek, I'm really taking off too much paint. It's not going to make sense with the lighting source if he's that pale, but sometimes I just dig in and I'm seeing how his eye is sunk, and I've got that effect, and then the rest of the eye comes out, and so I'm just captured by trying to get that kind of feather texture. So you got to watch yourself. I don't think I can get close enough with the camera for you to see that in doing this I'm revealing some of the cracks in the surface that were introduced by the scratching caused by the sanding. And because of that, the pigment gets deposited into that, and so it makes the liftoff more interesting. Okay, another reason to do this. And I'm trying to keep my liftoffs in the way that the feathers would go. And I'm taking it right out to the edges. So that I can play with that. Bring some of that darkness in here. To look nice and fluffy. He's awfully cute. Now, I tend to work this a little bit longer, and you can leave little blotches with a brush like this. You can just leave little blotches, which works as a nice texture on that particular area. This has to be dealt with in some way. To make it look more natural. And back to that light pink. So you can repaint areas again if you've taken too much paint off, and you can put some more paint back as you feel you need. add a little bit of blue down here to get some more shadow in there. A little wispier on here. That shape. Okay, I think I'm just going to put a little bit of lemon yellow and white up here at the top where we've got darkened. So that's opaquely done. And it's not a particularly good photograph. So just make a bunch of this up. There's that part. That. Okay. Now, you can take, when this is dry, you can take the, oh, that stuck down, that's good. You can take this and you can scratch some stuff back in to white if you want. Okay. You can decide how much of that you want to do, if any. Now, I am pushing now down into the clay. And I did try and lift up here, but it wasn't lifting well for me. Just on that edge, so I'm going to go in there. And just get that little bit of white highlight. Don't have a sharp tip on this one, so it stuck a little bit there in that, and that's not good. You want to be careful of that. This is white underneath here, and that got lost, so I can bring that back. Come out. This is going to be thicker paint. So instead of doing that, you might want to just add some white paint, your choice. Bit of texture here. Scrape this back. Right down here to the tip of the bill, which is translucent. That's gotten all a little bit too harsh. It would have been nicer if I could have just lifted that up. So I think what I'm going to do is, I would recommend, I haven't done this for a while, I would recommend that you practice scraping out maybe on a practice piece. And if it doesn't work as well as you hope or think or want, then I would recommend that you just put in a little bit of opaque paint because it'll look less harsh. I'm going to skate back to that edge. Blend that up into there. Look over here on the screen. It's going okay. This isn't. Can really push the paint around into lines. Now, something that sometimes I do, which I didn't do today, is after I finish getting the first layer of paint on it, then I use light layers of paint, and then I scrape it all, sand it all, and then I build it back up again. And I think that can be kind of fun. So something else you can try. The whole idea of it is that you're going to play with it. Just knocking those textures back a little bit. thinner line that I'm getting. Just going back and some of the dark purple bits. You can also pick it up while it's still wet. It depends on how textured you want it to be. Kind of like a little parrot, but that's the way these little pigeons look. If you use a bigger brush, I think you get less noticeable strokes. But we're gonna use a little bit of orange up here. I think my hand's been getting away. Maybe a little bit of green. My hat might get down in here in order for me to see it. There's no way around it. Put this yellow over here. should have stayed with the orange. At any time, if you don't like what you're getting, you can go in and sand it all off. And bingo bango. Sorry, that's out of focus for you. I have to have it focus for me for this last little bit. So, now, like I said, I scraped it off at this translucent area, and it didn't look translucent. So I'm going to go in and put a little bit of white paint. I really need to be able to get right in on top of it, and I can't do that with my hat on. So, excuse me, I'm going to obscure the view by getting in here for a moment. Smooth that out. Okay. I could fuss with that some more, but I think we'll just leave it. Now, I like the background the way it is with just the perlin green, but that is kind of what's the word for it? Sort of monotone. So I'm going to just put in a little bit of leaf green in a mottled way with a filbert. Goal being to make it kind of mottled and therefore more interesting. But that may be that's downfall and makes it too busy for the other stuff that's going on. You'll have to decide. I have to pick this up for a minute. I'm just going to dry brush over here. Okay. So there we have our scrawny-necked little guy, Jeremy. I ended up getting his forehead not as rounded because I was cutting in not carefully around there, but I like the way it is, and I don't want to risk anything else. But remember, if you don't like something, you sand it off and you start all over again. It's different than in the photo. I really need to come down here with the white and create a more even chin thing with the purple. I guess I could try and do that. But I put so much green there that I might not be able to do that. It's got kind of strokes here. I don't think it's just going to look fussy. What happens is the neck comes out. Just going to have to leave that. The neck comes out more at an angle like that, so there's a longer throat bit there coming down into the throat. And I've got him sitting up more at attention. But that's okay. When you're all done, you can leave it as is, or because we've used a water-soluble medium, you can use a spray fixative or varnish. And Claybord makes one for Claybord. But there are other resins that don't yellow that you could use, and you'd be fine with those. And then you just have to decide, did I make the right decision by making the background so busy? Should I have done something else? And then that's all a decision for next time. But right now, I think we're going to leave it like that. I'm going to put one little dot extra of white. I'm going to roll around my brush here so that water doesn't come off. I don't know if you saw that. I'm going to roll around here so water doesn't come off my brush. And I'm going to put a little dot above the other dot. And then a little bit down here. Because that's sort of glistening. I just don't think this is soft enough. So I'm going to get rid of Just roll around his throat there. Yeah, I like that. So now I think I'm done. So I'm going to paint my name in, or scratch your name in, and paint my name in. In editing this, I have a regret that I didn't bring back the highlight along his throat. I really thought that around minute 49, when I still had that, I thought that it had better appeal. But that's something, because we have a videotape we can look at in hindsight. So keep that in mind. Focus on those things you don't want to let go of. And for me here, it was the eye and getting the beak somewhat right. But I do look at this and regret not capturing or bringing back some of those white highlights on the throat. So I've got a little bit of white and quin pink. Mixed together. Just get rosin down there. I lost my space in there. Put that back in. Okay. I'll scan this so you can see more closely the kinds of dips and scratches and stuff. I still think there should be more bits of white or something, pinky color here. Don't want that bright. Some purpley shadow in there. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Take a little bit more highlight over here. Yeah, we're going to stop. Fussing, 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 fussing. You can just keep doing this on and on and on, because, like I said, you can just always scratch it all back. It's kind of fun. I just thought it might be something you'd like to see. And then, of course, you can decide what kind of background you want it on. I put it on a pre-painted piece of paper here. And it's interesting, it has the same kind of colors, that triad of green and purple and orange. And then I also put this on the background that's just a dark, rich purple cloth, which is more muted, but I think supports the color of the bird. So play with that, and then I'll do a little scan in so that you can see some of those marks on the board.